Hello there! In this video, I am just going to be introducing myself, giving a brief history of what I've been up to the last several years of my life. My name is Caitlin Morrow, and I live in Sandy, Utah. So, I was born in 1998 in Utah, and have lived here for my entire life, and it's a good place to live. I had the most typical of childhoods. I was the middle of 5 children. I grew up in a teeny house where we were all forced to become really, really close to one another. So I grew up really close with my siblings and to my other family members, especially my grandmother who lived next door. I was fortunate enough to be able to learn from her as I was growing up. I graduated from high school in 2016. I went to Jordan High School, home of the Beat Diggers, which is the most silly of all mascots, but we embrace it. After I graduated from high school, I went on to work at a couple of different preschools and became involved in early childhood education. So I first started out working at a Japanese-style preschool, and then transferred and started working at one that was more American-based so that I could learn a lot about younger kids. Ultimately, I decided that while I like younger kids, I like the older ones even better, and so that's where I decided to move my studies and my career. So I ended up going to Utah Valley University and graduated in 2020 with a degree in English education. My goal was always to go teach middle school English because that's something that I became passionate about as I got older. I just wanted to share my love of reading with students, and I wanted to read some texts that had some really poignant and important themes in them. So after I graduated, I got my first teaching job at a school called Copper Mountain Middle School, and that is where I still work. I am a second-year teacher. So I ended up a brand spanking new teacher in the middle of the pandemic, teaching 7th and 8th grade language arts, and it has been a ride, to say the least. I really love working with my 7th and 8th graders. They are sarcastic and funny, but still innocent enough to be adorable. And I really love working with them because we're able to read some really hard-hitting texts and talk about some elements of life that are just so important for students to think about. Some of my favorite things that we get to read are, we get to read the first Harry Potter book with my 7th graders, and that's just really fun for me as a big Harry Potter fan. We get to read some older fiction like The Most Dangerous Game, and we get to read a really cute book called Freak the Mighty about 2 young boys who are different from the norm, but learn to have adventures and be friends despite all that, and I just think it's a wonderful life lesson. Then we get to talk about a bunch of World War II stuff with my 8th graders and read stories like Journey to Topaz. We get to read the hard-hitting The Outsiders, which is a wonderful book, and one of my personal favorites because we can do a lot of fun stuff with it. We get to read The Hunger Games, and all of that stuff just makes me love being a middle school language arts teacher. I developed a passion for reading pretty early on in life, and I wanted other people to love reading as much as I did, which is a big reason why I decided to become an English teacher. I came to the school that I am currently at, and I realized that about 20% of my students qualify for remedial reading classes, meaning they're reading usually 3 or 4 grade levels below where they should be. While I teach 7th and 8th grade, I have a lot of students who read between a 2nd and 4th grade reading level. And as I've taught them, I realized that I didn't have the tools in my belt that I wanted to have to help them grow as readers. which is a big reason that I decided to pursue this graduate degree. So now I'm here at ASU hoping to learn a lot of strategies that I can use in my classroom to help my emergent readers just blossom and develop in the way that I know they're capable of doing. That's kind of my educational past and how I came to be where I am here. This is just a little bit more about me as a person, just my hobbies and interests. One of my obsessions is traveling. I love just going anywhere, going on adventures. So I've got a bunch of pictures here of places that I've been. I recently went to Seattle. I went to Hawaii over the summer. I went to Boston. I've been to the Redwoods. I've been to the UK. And my overall favorite place has to be the Oregon coast. I would travel there all the time if I could. This is something that I'm just super passionate about, and I love being a teacher because you have those little breaks where you can go travel in between school semesters and things like that. I also really love painting. I started painting during the pandemic after I watched way too much Bob Ross. Bob Ross is a hero of mine. I actually make my students, when they have study hall, I put Bob Ross on in the background. So now I've made my students kind of obsessed with him too. But I just love that he says that anyone can paint, anyone can develop skills, and that's something that I've worked on the last couple of years, and it just brings me a great deal of joy. So on the screen are some of the things that I've painted over the years. My favorite probably of which being is in the lower right hand corner with that painting of Hogwarts on a pumpkin. That took me probably about 6 hours, and people thought I was crazy because I decided to paint a pumpkin, which is, a perishable canvas, but it was a lot of fun. I also, surprise, surprise, as an English teacher, love to read. Specifically in college, I focused my attention on texts that were about 1850. So I took some extra Shakespeare classes, got to read things like Pride and Prejudice, and just really enjoyed learning about history through the lens of literature. I also really like some modern books, Harry Potter being my favorite of all time, and just some modern fantasy things that come out are just really fun to read and share with my students a little bit later on. I also really like lettering and doing things like calligraphy, and I also write books and stories and things when I have spare time, and that's something that just kind of lets me step away from my life for a minute and focus on something else. So that is a lot of fun for me. And really, that is me. That's the gist of who I am and what I've been doing for the last couple of years. Before I close, I just wanted to point out that the slide template was courtesy of Slides Carnival. But anyway, thank you so much for watching.